My name is Gabbie, and I'm one of the occupational therapy interns from Columbia University. So, we are here today to talk about emergency preparedness. Have you all raise your hand, or you can join on Zoom if you have an emergency plan already in place at home? I'm just curious. You do?
Yeah, I went to a meeting over at the Isaac Center last month. They
Okay.
gave you the bag
You got a
with
bag?
everything.
Oh, that's great. Okay, we'll be talking about the to-go bag in a little while. Anyone else on Zoom? Does anyone have any emergency plan in place right now or a to-go bag at home? Okay, well, that's why we are here for today. So, some things that we're going to be discussing today, what you would do in different emergency situations, how to act in different types of situations like fires, flooding, emergency evacuations, how to compile an emergency kit and contacts, and then putting it all together. We'll have the chance to make our own list at the end. All right, so we were talking about different types of emergencies that might occur. So the first one we're going to be talking about is fire. And now the way that we're going to go through each one of these is I'm going to share a few tips, but then I'm going to ask you all to add to the list because we can look at all kinds of things, but today with the OT perspective, the occupational therapy perspective, I really want to know what each one of you is individually considering in the event of these situations because everyone's needs are different and everyone's routines and homes are organized differently, so everyone has to, take slightly different measures in the event of these emergencies. So the first one we're going to be talking about is fire. Maybe the most pertinent thing that we think of when there's a fire is a smoke detector. So when is the last time everyone checked the batteries in their smoke detector?
A couple of weeks ago.
A couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
Okay, well, everyone
December,
is
yeah.
December. Okay, everyone's much more prepared than I am. Joseph, how about you? When's the last time you checked your smoke detectors?
Not in the recommended time period.
Not in the recommended time period. So, it's recommended that every 6 to 12 months you check the batteries in your smoke detector to make sure it's working. There should be a button that can test. If you can't reach your smoke detector, if you have a neighbor or a family member who can assist you, or the super in your building can help you out, then they'll be able to check that for you. And also keeping extra batteries nearby in the event that your smoke detector does not have working batteries. So keeping extra batteries on hand. The second is to make a plan. So we recommend that you contact your local fire department and explain any special needs that you might have in the case of an emergency. And the department will provide you instructions with specific instructions for an evacuation plan. So if you have any mobility needs, you need an alternate way of exiting the building in the event of an evacuation, those are things that you want to be prepared for in advance so that you can have a plan. And then the last thing is to identify 2 ways out of every room to escape a home fire and plan for the help that you may need. So sometimes, the door might be, if the fire is in your own home, the door might be locked. Maybe you need an alternate way to exit your kitchen or your bedroom, or contacting your super to know what the building's, procedures are for an emergency evacuation where you can't access the most typical way of exiting the building is something important to know in advance. So when we're considering responding to a fire, what are some other things that you all can think of that would be important information to know in advance?
So if you leave to go out, you make sure the door is closed.
Make sure the door is closed when you leave to go out.
And where the exits are.
Where the exits are, exactly. Anyone on Zoom, do you have anything to add about being prepared for a fire?
I would say consider having a fire, what's it called?
Fire
extinguisher in your home. That also needs to be checked periodically.
And knowing how to operate it as well in advance. Not practicing with it, but knowing how to operate it in advance is something that's useful. There's also, this would have to be something that was purchased, but there are fireproof containers or envelopes.
Blankets.
That
you have the fireproof blankets. I just saw that on the internet that was shown not to use water, but there's a blanket that you if you have on the stove is a stove, you could put it over and it'll put the fire out. on the
Fireproof
pan.
blankets,
Yeah.
fire extinguishers over water.
Never pour water on burning wax.
Never pour water on burning wax. Is that what was said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
that's
can
right.
ask a question
Mm-hmm.
about the blanket. Can you use that blanket if to help yourself to put out the fire on yourself? Or it's just for a stove or something like that?
It comes in a pouch, and they were demonstrating it, and you're just supposed to, like, if you have a pan that's on fire, you just take it out and
So
put
it's a
it over
small
the
thing.
pan. Yeah,
I think so, yeah, in the event of an external fire.
right.
There's also containers that you can purchase that are fireproof, that you can put important medical documents,
Safe.
medication, prescription, maybe financial or legal documents.
I
So
got
if
one
those
from
things,
Amazon.
Yeah,
you do,
I have a
okay.
safe.
Yeah, I
The
got
safe
one
is
from-
fireproof.
And you have a
Amazon.
safe, it's fireproof.
Fireproof.
Mine
Yeah.
is just by,
The small one, yeah.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
can put my special papers.
So
in.
that's another thing that's really important to think about in advance, having those really important documents and items secure so that in the event of a fire, you can focus on your own safety and you don't
Yeah, 'cause
have to
mine
go
has a handle
scrambling
to
for
it that you could
things.
carry.
That's a really great idea.
Right, yeah.
So you just
Or
grab it
grab
and you
it
go.
Yeah.
Okay.
we have, seeing as a senior building, we have the sprinklers.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. we
Sprinklers and
have
system.
Inside the
Mhm.
apartment.
So that's
Yeah,
another
up on
thing
the,
that you
Yeah,
could
I don't
also
have
reach out to your
sprinklers.
building manager. Do the sprinklers operate? You know, when's the last time those have been tested?
Yeah.
Do we have those? That's another thing that you can check in on them with them about.
We have
in
them, but I don't
advance.
know, I've never seen them.
Right.
They were
yeah.
tested, yeah.
If they were
Yeah.
tested.
I would also say that for people that are hearing impaired, there's special smoke detectors. I think that they
These are the lights.
yeah, they have
The
very
lights, 'cause I have
bright
it in my
lights.
apartment. In
Um,
my apartment, since I have a handicap apartment,
Mm-hmm.
and we have the flashing lights.
Oh.
yeah, so that's something to keep in mind if you're hearing impaired or have a friend or someone. And if you're also low income, I believe the Red Cross and the fire department give out smoke detectors for free.
They also
Yeah.
come and check, like the senior
Yeah, every
buildings,
year.
they check the,
Yeah,
Yeah.
every 6 months.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And
See,
they put two in my apartment
Alarm,
lately.
yeah.
that's
We
great.
first had one that was just over the kitchen. Now they have one over my bedroom.
Oh,
They
wow.
put an extra one in the
So
apartment
that you
this
can
year.
see it if it goes on.
So I have two in my apartment
Oh,
now.
that's great.
That's good.
yeah, I
Yeah.
have two, I have one in the bedroom and one in the.
Like
outside.
hallway.
So everyone's prepared for a fire. I hope it doesn't happen. And this is why I added this slide, because I wanted to hear what you all, had in your own homes, because when we share strategies and things like that, other people can maybe share ideas, or if you have the same thing in common, you can talk about what works and what doesn't work. So we're going to move on to the next one, which is extreme heat. So I don't know about all of you, but my apartment does not have air conditioning. So
I
it
have
gets
two.
very, very hot. So during the summer months, heat waves are common. They can be especially dangerous. Heat-related illness includes heat cramps, heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and in extreme cases, fainting. Obviously, if you're experiencing these symptoms, you should call 911. But to help it manage extreme heat, some tips are to stay out of the sun. When you go outside, apply sunscreen and make sure you're always carrying bottled water. Wear sunglasses to protect your eyesight. And in the event of extreme heat, or if you don't have air conditioning in your building, you can find a cooling center. So if the heat index is very high, you can call 311 during a heat emergency and find out where your closest cooling center is. Does anyone have anything to add about what you do when there's extreme heat?
The heat, when it is so dry, you could use humidifiers.
Okay, use a humidifier when there's extreme heat. Miss Johnson, did you want to share?
I was saying that blackout curtains, if you have a bright apartment, blackout curtains are very handy.
Oh, that's a really good idea to help keep the apartment cool.
Yeah.
And Miss Johnson, what were you saying?
The other Miss Johnson.
The other Miss Johnson.
I also have the fans that you can put around your neck,
Uh-huh.
and especially if you're outside and it's not much of air blowing and whatnot, and it's something you can
Right.
use the fans, to cool you off. Some have water. You can
Okay.
put water in. You could just hold,
Mhm.
and that way you can, if you're outside and can't get to a cooling center right away, you can also carry one of those with you.
That's a really good idea. Just so everyone on Zoom heard that, There's those portable fans that can go around your neck. Some of them spray water, some of them just blow cool air. And so if you're doing your grocery shopping or you're going elsewhere in the community, that's another good way to stay cool while you're outside.
Yep.
Okay, nice everyone. All right, next we're gonna be talking about blizzards. So sometimes when there's a snow day, you're just happy to stay at home and relax, watch television, have some food. But in the event of an extreme blizzard, if you have to travel, it's really important that you share with a family member or trusted contact where you're going to be going. If you're traveling out of the city, if you're taking, a train outside of the city, telling people this is when it's meant to arrive, this is when I'm going to get there. And when you're going outside, of course, keep all skin covered, be aware of frostbite and hypothermia. And then in the event of extreme blizzard and you are unable to leave your home for, a few days, this is where our emergency kit will come into play. So we're going to be talking about the emergency kit a little bit later in the presentation, but for preparation of a blizzard that might lead to a power outage, it's important to have extra blankets, extra scarves, maybe heat packs. There's those ones that you hit it and you can shake it, and like the heat warmers, they make some reusable hand warmers that you just have to charge them. So if those are charged in advance, you can have those ready to go, as well as non-perishable food. Sometimes we go grocery shopping, then all of a sudden it snows, you go through your groceries, and if people are unable to order takeout or have food delivered, it's really, really helpful to have non-perishable food items stocked up in your pantry in the event that you won't be able to leave the home for a few days. Okay. Anything else that we do to prepare for blizzards or when blizzards do occur?
Well, usually you get a head notice for a blizzard, like at least a week. We're talking about blizzard a few days before. You can prepare some foods that you really like, especially a soup or something, and freeze it, so that when this blizzard comes, you can't get out. You'll have your soup. And if the blizzard doesn't come, save it for another blizzard.
That's a really good idea. So meal preparing in advance, you can freeze those foods and have them ready to go in the event that there will be a blizzard.
Right.
Also, something that's recommended for power outages is taking any perishable food from the fridge and putting it in the freezer so that it stays as cold as possible for as long as possible.
Flashlights. You need flashlights.
You need flashlights. You need to make sure you have for the flashlights, batteries. I have no extra batteries right now, so I am not listening to my own advice, but I have to get my batteries for my flashlight and my smoke detector. Anything else that we do in the event of extreme blizzard? I think we've talked
Don't go
about
outside. Try not to go out.
Yep,
because
stay inside.
You can't see everything that's on the ground, like especially ice. Can't really see things that are coming at you.
Yeah, that's something that's especially important to consider if you use some kind of mobility aid like a walker or a wheelchair.
Definitely can't use a wheelchair.
Black ice is so dangerous, and you can't always see it, even when you're walking, especially if it's underneath a layer of snow. So those are things that are really important to bring up. Thank you for adding that. Okay, here we are at flooding. So we have some resources here actually that we'll send you home with today that includes a map about New York City's most severe flood risk zones. But you can also check online to see if you live in one of the hurricane evacuation zones. And there's a link in this presentation that will be sent out to everyone for you to easily access that. But that way you can know if you are ordered to evacuate, if you need to have a plan in place for that in the event of a hurricane, because some areas of the city are more susceptible to flooding than others. Yeah. Also, being prepared for power interruptions is similar to what we were talking about, charging your cell phone and other portable devices regularly because you won't be able to charge them in the event of flooding. If you do start to see water, you don't want to go for any electricity in the moment, but if there's the water's coming up through lower floors or there's a risk of flooding, maybe unplugging things in advance before any water comes into your apartment to make sure that doesn't cause any fires or risk of electricity. Having your home emergency kit prepared in case you're unable to leave the home or accessing public transportation. And if you do need to evacuate, having a to-go emergency bag ready. So that emergency kit for home is a little bit different than the one that you have to, grab and go, like you said before. So here is our map of the flood zone. And I've put a little circle around.
Guess
as
where
you
we
can
are.
see. As you can see, this area in Upper Manhattan on the east side is actually one of the most at-risk areas for
Because it's
flooding in the
surrounded by
event
water.
of a hurricane. So hurricanes, tropical storms, nor'easters, even intense rainstorms. I mean, the first time we did our other group here at the site was that day that we had extreme flooding, and the subways were flooded. No one could travel anywhere. We had to do that group virtually. So it could happen, and especially in this area. So does anyone live in the area in the circle?
I'm in the number one zone, the area number one. I live in Drive, FDR Drive. And the last time we had the Hurricane Sandy, it went over to the second floor. I mean, went over to the Second Avenue, and it filled the basement and everything. And we had to evacuate for 7 days because they had to close down the building. That's on the drive at 94th Street. We're number one area, flood area.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. So knowing that in advance, right, is important to know, and knowing what your building or your local community's evacuation routes, evacuation plans in advance is very important so that you're not scrambling to find that information.
Just before we move, does anyone else notice anything else that's in this flood zone? Just thinking off the top of your head, that's important.
The hospital.
Yep. Metropolitan Hospital, our friend, is also in the flood zone.
They live right opposite.
Yeah. So I did notice though the other day, and I did follow up on this. Metropolitan Hospital is building flood walls. Now I don't know how effective they may or may not be, especially if everything around Metropolitan is flooded. I don't know if you're gonna become a mermaid and go through the water to get there. But that's something to keep in mind also, right? That one of the challenges is that even some of the institutions, right? Metropolitan Hospital that's right here is in a flood zone.
And the walls are almost finished, the flood walls.
Where I live at, we're built over, which is like a river, because we're sinking with development that I'm in now. They get ready to do work over there now, especially groundwork, because they want to dig down under, because they're scared in a few years from now we're going to be sinking because we're over a river. The buildings are over a river.
Well, it's a good thing you're keeping up to date on
Yeah.
the process, so you know what's happening.
Yes. So they informed us about that, and they're getting ready to do work, pulling up the grounds and putting barriers and whatnot, so that we won't end up in the river.
Right. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's a really good point about the hospital. So something that I didn't include on this presentation is identifying the next closest hospital. So in the event that you have an injury or illness,
so you have Metropolitan and Mount Sinai, one on each side.
Right. Okay, let's move on. So we talked a little bit about this, what we would do in the event of flooding. I think we can move on. And we've talked a little bit about power outages already. Calling your power provider to report the outage. Sometimes they can give you an update on when the power is expected to come back, so you know exactly how long to prepare for. Having a flashlight with batteries accessible, keeping a clear pathway in your home, and keeping night lights around the house that don't need to be plugged in.
I was gonna say.
Especially for people with low visibility, they have those touch lights. They have some rechargeable like LEDs, those fake candles.
Right. I have the lights that there's most of the batteries, so you could just turn on and could carry it around the house with you.
Oh, like a lantern.
The lanterns.
Like a lantern.
Yeah.
I was going to say, thinking about, getting around the home, what are the most important areas where we think we need the light? I mean, anywhere you go in your home, but especially the bathroom, especially the kitchen. And what's one other thing?
The bedroom.
In the bedroom. What's one other thing that we can do to help make the home safer in the event of a power outage?
That it's not cluttered.
Yes, exactly what I was looking for, making sure the home is not cluttered. So, we're not talking about clutter in the home today, but just always keeping in mind that keeping floors clear, keeping important areas like the bathroom and the bedroom are clear, because if the power does go out, I mean, especially in the winter when it gets dark at 4 p.m.
Right.
And even though we might have those small lights, the visibility is not going to be the same. So you want to try and reduce your fall risk and reduce the risk of hazards in the home as much as possible by keeping clutter to a minimum. Even, maybe keeping a light right next to where your medications are, so you're not taking the wrong ones, or you're not mixing up anything in your medication cabinet. So just something to keep in mind, keeping the home as safe as possible.
I would also say for those of you that have pets, especially in a power outage, they could become a fall risk. So perhaps consider maybe they have some harnesses or something that has a light on it, or maybe like how like bikers wear that reflective material. Think about getting something like that for your pets, because you don't want that, unfortunately become a fall risk or something.
One other thing that I want to mention, if you have any medications that need to be refrigerated, having a backup plan for any medications that have to be refrigerated. Again, if the power goes out, taking all that perishable food and medication, putting it in the freezer, that's where it will stay cold as long as possible, and keeping the freezer closed to maintain that temperature. Anything else that we can think of for power outages, being prepared? Batteries, having batteries.
I would probably say, and this might come up later, making sure you have all your important phone numbers and information written down. Some people assume, that their handy dandy phone is always going to be available. But if the power's out long enough and you can't charge your phone, you want to make sure you have your emergency contact information available, so you could call from some kind of landline or, whenever first responders come.
We'll be talking about that as well.
See? I beat you.
Okay, just a few more general considerations. Sorry, what was that? Okay, just a few more general considerations for different things that might come up in our own lives. Some mobility considerations. Just having that plan of how you will leave and where you're going to go. So if you need to come up with an alternative plan with your building, with your supervisor, if there's no elevator, if there's only stairs, if you need extra assistance getting out, in the case of an evacuation, you want to have that plan in place beforehand instead of scrambling to call the super saying, how can I be assisted during this time? You can also get a medical or emergency alarm. Some people might have them already. So, in the event that you do need help, having that and knowing who's going to come to help you, if that's the case in your building. You could make an OK or help sign, which go in the window. So if all else fails, I don't have a plan, I don't have an alarm. My neighbor who was supposed to help me happens to be, I don't know, at the doctor today, out of town. These signs, if you make them large enough, there's one that's red and it says help, and then there's one that's green and it says okay. So if you are in need of a first responder that's in the area, putting that sign in the window, of course, call 911, call for help, but that's just an extra measure to, alert the outside world that there is emergency.
Well, I was also told yesterday by the nurse practitioner that I need to get in touch with the fire department to let them know that I'm handicapped, and if a case of emergency, that they have to have
provide you with that evacuation plan.
Right, yep. They'll have that information already on hand.
Lorraine, you were going to say something?
That's correct.
I was going to say, I'm on the emergency list of Con Edison. You can sign up if you're not able to walk or you're in a wheelchair or whatever. You can put yourself on their list, and every time there's an emergency, they always call you. And I'm also on emergency for the housing authority, where they always call. It's a special list that you get on, not just a regular list. It's an emergency list for evacuation plans. And it's Con Edison and some other one. Definitely Con Edison. They have a special group that deals with emergency situations, which have to do with blackouts or things like that. And 311 has an emergency list too. They do call you and ask if you're okay. But at your community centers, they should have you on their list too.
Thank you. So contacting your local fire department, Con Edison, community centers to know that, you know, you're on that list in the case of an evacuation so that you know what the plan is. And I have the Con Edison phone number later in this presentation, so that's easily accessible for everyone. Okay. Some financial considerations. We've been talking all about buy a fireproof, envelope, buy a fire blanket, buy batteries, buy flashlights, buy lights for around the house, and all of those costs add up. So Joseph, I know you mentioned that there are resources to help people replace their smoke detectors. So looking into those options for what's available for free in the community is really helpful. You mentioned that you went to an event where they were giving out equipment.
It's a backpack.
What was the event?
It was at the Isaac Center a couple of months ago.
Okay.
And they give you everything that you're supposed to have in a fire.
Okay.
It was given by Senator Serrano's office. Gave out backpacks with everything in it.
Those community resources and events to see if there's any, other free giveaways. But if not, slowly stocking things over time. So you don't need to do it all at once. We're not anticipating an emergency right away, but we want to be as prepared as possible. So every time you go to the grocery store, you have groceries delivered, add an extra can of non-perishable food. So that way you stock the pantry, you stock the kitchen, and you can do it slowly over time to break up those costs. Using what you already have to put in your emergency kit is also a way to help avoid these considerations. Maybe you have a flashlight already. Knowing where that is in your home is something that's really important. Locating it and setting it to the side. You don't need to buy the new flashlight. And spreading those costs out.
Ziploc baggies are good for papers, important papers. Ziploc baggies.
Ziploc bags are good for papers.
Yeah.
So that's something
they
that
can be
you can add
protected.
to your grocery list to protect your items. And these are all things that you can spread out over time. So you can make a plan to purchase, okay, this week I want to get, those batteries. And then next week I want to get the extra nightlight, but you don't need to buy it all at once. And a lot of those things go into the food pantry. So looking at those community resources to see what's available for you so that you don't have to do it all at once. Other health considerations, we talked about any power needs. If you require power to operate any medical devices, important equipment, oxygen tanks, having a backup oxygen tank, if you do use one of those that is just, mechanically operated.
I have the portable one and I have the big one.
Perfect, a portable one. So knowing that you have a backup plan for those important medications that might need refrigerating or the devices that you need that use electricity, having a backup plan for those.
CPAP machine.
For your CPAP machine, having a backup plan, some kind of maybe portable.
What kind of a backup plan can you have for those? What kind of a backup plan?
Again?
What kind of a backup plan can you have for?
That would be a really great question to ask
use that at home.
That would be a good question to ask your medical provider. So whoever has recommended or prescribed those different devices, you can ask them what options are available in the event of an emergency. I'm unfortunately not able to recommend that today.
Yeah, they also usually recommend to make sure you record the company of your device, right? So we all know every wheelchair, every device comes from a particular company. And they usually advise you to call that company to find out what their procedures are for emergencies. So they might have backup items, backup batteries, different things, but as well as talking to your medical provider, calling that company to see what their procedures are.
Thank you. Keeping some extra medications, at least 30 days, and extra items like canes or eyeglasses, just in the event that you're not able to go get new equipment. So having those extra things. Planning for your food needs if you follow a special diet. So making sure that you don't just have extra food, you have extra food that follows the diet that you're in. And water, having backup water stored.
And money.
Money.
Cash money.
I see John is raising a hand.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I have a question. When you say about having extra items, how can you have extra medication if you're only given a 30-day supply of medication and you need it every day. I don't understand how saving extra medication could be possible if you're only given a 30-day supply. If, I'll speak for myself. I am given a 30-day supply. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah,
Um,
so
90-day supply.
yeah, so you can ask your medical provider or the pharmacy to provide you with some extras in case of an emergency. Sometimes they
usually
do
won't
that.
do
We're not
that
asking you to
because
like
of
save the.
insurance. Insurance issues will not give extra medication.
But your pharmacy will.
Yeah, I get
If you
90-day supplies of my medication.
That's a good
If you
question
need
to just
extra-
contact your medical provider or your pharmacy to
Your
see if
pharmacy,
there
yeah.
is some kind of emergency allowance.
Okay.
Everyone's insurance and prescriptions are a little bit different, but it's just something to look into to have on hand. You know, it's not a hard and fast rule to have exactly 30 days, but at least having, you know, some extra things on hand or having a plan in place that even if you're unable to leave the home, maybe you know, okay, my pharmacy, even in the event of
They
an
could
emergency,
deliver.
will deliver the medication
Yes.
if I need it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And
Thank
another
you.
consideration, let's say if they don't want to, for whatever reason, give you extras, then you know, okay, in my case, I'm not going to wait till I only have one pill left, right? You might want to consider if you have 10 left, okay, let me go, right? Because again, if a blizzard or air quality or whatever you name it issue happens, you want to make sure you have at least some kind of supply to get you through a couple of days, right? So in that case, I would just recommend not waiting to the last second to get a refill. I don't know if you do or don't, but that's something to keep in mind with refilling.
That's a really good point too. And so we've already talked about batteries, and then just in terms of some important documents, keeping an up-to-date list of medical information that is easily accessible. So we're going to be compiling a little bit of a checklist later, and there's a section where you can write some of those things, but that includes medical conditions, allergies, medications, prescription records, doctor and insurance cards. It's really helpful to have all of those things in one place, and make sure that it's up to date so that in the event that something happens or you need additional help, you're getting the exact care that you need.
That includes your pet's information also.
Thank you.
I'm switching insurance companies on January 1.
So you're gonna have to update
Make
that.
sure you update that.
that list on your emergency information.
I will.
That's good. Okay, and then last thing that we'll talk about before we move on to emergency kits is just some technology considerations. So does everyone here have a cell phone? Yes. If you don't have a cell phone, you know, maybe keeping a radio in the event of a power outage, or just in general having a radio for emergency alerts and important information when, you know, like we said, we're unable to charge our phones any longer. If you do have a cell phone, keeping it charged, charging it regularly, and looking online or making phone calls in advance to make your emergency plan. So knowing who you'll call, where you'll go, what information you need, and doing all of that research before. So maybe that's contacting local community centers, calling the fire department, all of the things that we've been talking about so far, doing that in advance and having your plan in place so that you're not scrambling to get that information when the time
Don't
comes.
panic.
And
Yeah.
don't panic.
That's easily said.
Okay, so we've been hinting at this the whole session so far, creating emergency kits. So what are some things, we've talked about this a little bit, but let's talk about some things that you think are useful to have in your emergency kit. Let's talk about if you need to leave the home. You can just shout it out.
All the same medication.
Medications.
Important documents.
Important documents.
Some money or somebody's here.
Some money.
Water.
Water. A water bottle and
Right.
bottled water.
Right.
Anything else?
Granola bars.
Food and snacks.
Snacks, yeah.
Especially in the event of an evacuation on a larger scale in the community, it might take a while to move out, or
Right.
you might not know where your next destination is. Having your food, having your medication. Anything else?
And a blanket too.
A blanket, some kind of
Because you never know
small
when-
compact blanket, because remember, we want to keep these things portable, so not too big. And maybe having someone, if it is on the bigger side, having a neighbor or someone that you say, you'll carry my bag when I go if I need help.
Maybe a hand sanitizer.
Hand sanitizer,
Toilet paper.
toilet paper or tissues.
Right.
Really?
Here's
You
some
never know.
other things. So
Portable
we have
aid kit.
flashlight,
Portable radio.
portable radio, any
Paper,
sanitizer,
pencil, and pen.
paper, pencil,
Paper
and
and pen,
pen,
yeah.
right? Especially
Mhm.
if phones, we can't use our phones, like Joseph was saying earlier, having that paper and pen ready to write things down. If you have a pet,
Yeah.
pet supplies, I did
Right.
mention pets, I thought I forgot. Maybe a first aid kit, you know, especially if you have any specific needs in terms of hygiene or skin, making sure that you have some bandages, maybe rubbing alcohol wipes ready, bringing batteries with you, copies of personal documents like you mentioned.
Mhm.
And those are the really important ones, right? You're not saying, oh, I want to
Right.
bring all my family photo albums with me.
No.
I know you do, and I do too, but that's one of those things that you know, we have to prioritize in the moment. Okay. So anything else? We already kind of talked about this. Anything else in terms of equipment or other things that you think that you might need to take with you in the event that you need to leave the home suddenly? And you don't need to share, but you know, some people maybe they have reminders, like a medication schedule. That's important to have a copy of it in your emergency kit. If you have any, you know, cognitive difficulties or you need reminders to take medications. Obviously, if you have any physical needs, making sure you have your glasses, your cane, some kind of portable walker, knowing what your plan is for, I don't know if you have charging your wheelchair, things like that.
I think they also have canes that can fold up.
Mhm.
So that's something, you know, I mean, it doesn't work for everybody, but I think that's kind of the point, kind of seeing what works for you, right? Because what
Exactly.
it means for everyone is a little different.
Exactly. Does anyone have anything to add? On here we have clothing and blankets,
Oh,
so
I was
maybe a
about
change
to
of
say-
clothes.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
to say change of clothes if possible.
Mhm. Okay. Fabulous. So we're gonna put it all together. Now, if you're on Zoom, we'll be emailing some documents as well as today's presentation to you in advance. But right now, if you just want to find a blank piece of paper and something to write with, we're just gonna do a few minutes of jotting down a few things that you would like to put in your emergency kit. And for those here in person, I will give you this checklist. Where do you think is a really good place to keep something like this?
Right on the table when you come in the door. Right on
Something
the
like what?
By the bed. The nice
Something like what?
So we have
Hello?
this, Ms. Johnson, we have this list right here that has emergency items to have as your checklist, important phone numbers, and any emergency notes. So it's actually really great to put something like this on the refrigerator, because that way it's going to be accessible at all times. Anyone who has to come into the home will be able to see it. I mean, you can have it posted in multiple places, but that way also it doesn't this doesn't happen. Oh, I put something else on top of it and then the paper disappeared.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Or, oh, my dog decided to, I don't know, eat it as a snack. So having it posted on the wall or on the fridge is a way to ensure that it stays safe and that it can be seen at all times. So we're gonna take just 2 minutes right now. Oh yes, we have those as well. We're gonna take just 2 minutes right now and everyone can jot down a few things that they would like to plan to put in your at-home emergency kit. And then we'll share them together. So we've talked about a lot of things. You can write down things that we've already discussed, items that we've already discussed, or maybe something that hasn't been mentioned that you need specifically for your own safety. So just a few things. We don't need to fill out this whole form right now. And again, if you're at home, you can just write on a blank piece of paper or just think of them in your head, and we'll share in just a minute.
So you want us to write here what the things that we need to have?
Yeah, just pick a few things that you think are most important for you to have in your emergency kit.
Thanks.
Are we gonna be getting any supplies at all today? Or
Yes, these are.
about?
I don't know if they'll be emailed today, but Jacob will be emailing the recording of the presentation and all of the documents that we have been using and discussing via email.
And the
I'm
ones
saying,
that are
at the place where you are today, where the people are in person, will they be getting anything?
yeah, so there's some there's not like physical materials like you got at Isaac's, but we do have like a magnet with also some emergency preparedness information. So the
Okay.
things that can't be emailed, I'm gonna be mailing them to people.
Well, you don't have to mail mine. I'll pick mine up when I get back.
Okay. That's for you to taste.
Oh, thank you. Okay, just one more minute, just a few things. And there's a space at the bottom of this sheet as well for important phone numbers. So emergency contacts, an out-of-town contact, the local fire and police departments. You can put the Con Edison number there, your doctor's number. If you have a pet, your pet's veterinarian's number. So those are things you can fill out, at a later date. And you're welcome to use this list, make your own list, add them. But like Joseph was saying earlier, having your emergency contact information easily accessible for both you and anyone who might be in your home in the event of an emergency. So does anyone want to share what they're putting in their emergency kit?
Medication.
Medication.
I got batteries and flashlight.
Batteries and a flashlight.
Change of clothes if possible.
Change of clothes. Anyone on Zoom? What are you putting in your emergency kit?
And also add a junk food.
Junk food. Okay, snacks.
I put a portable radio.
A portable radio.
The
The radio is multi-purpose because it keeps you informed if there's alerts, but also you listen to music.
Yeah.
That comes in the bag.
Oh, that's great.
I put on mine cards, so at least if I have to evacuate, I have something to occupy my time. So playing cards.
Playing cards. And that's something that's portable and small, so it
Yeah.
doesn't take up too much space.
So we
Someone mentioned earlier too, pen and paper or
Pen and
pencil and
paper,
paper. So that could serve as both writing down reminders or important information. And if you want to doodle, that's something to pass the time as well. Maybe a small book. For
Yeah.
some people, if you have any, like a pocket, like religious material, if
Right,
you want to keep that
Bible.
with you, you can bring that with you.
I also put my family stuff on there because I know they're not going to make their own go bag, so I'm including their stuff in my go bag.
And
How
so
about candles, not the one without the flame, the battery candles?
the battery
They give
candle,
off
that's a good
light,
thing to
you know.
keep. Say that again?
They give off lots of light. I have
Mhm.
like 4.
Okay.
And you don't have to put the regular light
Oh,
on.
right.
And they have a timer so they come on.
Oh, and then save battery afterwards?
Yes, they
Mm.
come on automatically.
So light source, flashlights, battery
Yeah.
operated candles. Okay, great. Thank you everyone for sharing. So you can, again, bring this list home or make a list at home. And where are we going to put it?
On the fridge.
On the
On the fridge.
Right.
And make a
On the
copy.
fridge and then I forget, so that's why it's.
I have everything on the fridge already.
Oh, that way, maybe you can, have a designated spot on the fridge and have it in a second place as well. Maybe you have a
Right.
bulletin board, maybe you have a
Mhm.
place in your bedroom that you can see it easily.
Mhm.
So it's good to keep those
Right.
in multiple safe places. Okay, we're about to wrap up. Here are some emergency phone numbers, and a lot of people mentioned these before. So police station, Con Edison, maybe contacting the New York City Department of Aging to find out what resources are available, events in the community, evacuation plans. We talked about contacting the fire department or Con Ed. Any specific insurance questions, contacting your insurance provider or your medical provider. And here are some other resources, and these will be emailed to you as well.
Okay.
But just all of the things that we've been talking about, it's even more tips and suggestions and strategies from the American Red Cross, the CDC, the National Institute on Aging, and the National Safety Council. So when you get this presentation in your email, you can click on these links to visit, more information.
You know, when you get your Con Edison bill every month, there's a lot of those numbers.
Mhm.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, so looking at the fine print, right? there, never kill.
Yeah, a lot of Social Security, everything they have on that when you get your Con Edison.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so just to wrap up, some kind of summarizing statements of everything that we've been talking about today. Keeping your emergency contact information and your emergency plan easily accessible. So knowing who you're going to contact, where you're going to go, what you're going to do in the event of an emergency. Maybe getting to know your neighbors or your building super if you live alone or you don't have family in the area, so that you always have that designated person or people who are going to, assist you in the event that you do need help. Building a support network, making a plan, and having a plan for how to check in with people when an emergency does happen. So if we're told to evacuate, I'm going to call you from this number, or if there's a flood, we're going to meet at this location.
Mhm.
Knowing that plan in place, having it ready to go, and keeping it in a spot where you can see it and where everyone is informed. And that's it for today. So thank you all for
Great.
sharing your helpful strategies. A lot of you have been already thinking about emergency preparedness, so I appreciate you sharing with the group, what works for you. And yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for attending.
Thank
Thank you, everybody.
you.
Appreciate it.
Bye, everyone. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.